Tyler, welcome into the show, man. Fireside Chat. And I think we have some cool topics to touch on this week. I'm very curious to what your thoughts are on a multitude of things that have happened. And it's only Thursday morning here. New Japan and AEW. Dude, wrapping up co-branded show Forbidden Door in my backyard here, Chicago, United Center. Dude, like what was your first instinct on that, man? I it's a pretty cool announcement.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it didn't take away from me, but I think a lot of people probably assume that was kind of the big announcement.
Yeah.
And not that it was like pushed super hard, but I mean, I was very excited for it. I was like, in my head, I'm like, all right, are those tickets selling out in 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes? Like, I don't know what United Center seats, like 19,000 for a basketball game. It's one of the bigger. Is that where the Bulls play, or they play at Allstate? Is that two different places?
That's where the Bulls played. It's it's big. I mean, it's a big. It's a big stadium.
Yeah,
no question.
So the stage, takes out probably 5,000 people. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna sell out really quickly because I'm thinking in the math in my head, like, okay, can I go and all that. So that's my instinct. And I like to go and travel for wrestling, but to say it's not something that is impactful for the business and it's for quote unquote hardcore fans, but I kind of hate that term. We don't have to get into it here, but I would say if you think 1 million people are hardcore watching AEW and then 1.7 million people watch Raw, there's not a huge difference between your hardcore and casual fans. So I think it's a for the segment of the population that likes to spend the most money. I think this is a big deal for them. So I think that's a smart business decision by both companies.
I do too. I do too. I mean, and I don't know. Maybe this will force Tony Khan to talk about these New Japan stars on his show, because too often, and even last night with Jay White appearing, it's like, that's a big deal if you know who Jay White is. And not everybody's going to know who Jay White is. And so, and I think some of the issues with integrating other companies' talent into the AEW show has been, okay, if you know this person, okay, that's cool. But if you don't, why does it matter? And this show, because it's going to be on pay-per-view and, they're going to presumably build some kind of feuds between these guys. I think it will force some of that. And long-term, I think that benefits Tony Khan and AEW, because if you do this big match, if you're going to do, we'll get into that in a little bit, I think. But if Okada's going to come in and wrestle Bryan Danielson, right? They're going to tell that story. And after that, people are going to know who Okada is. So if and when he comes back, later on, whether it's a year or 2 years, people will know who he is. And I think that will help those types of talent integrations in the future, just draw more than they probably do right now.
For sure. And, I'm in general dubious that anything's going to change the way Tony Khan books and present shows. So until I see it, that's kind of my mindset. But obviously agree with everything you're saying there. And there is a way to get those people over, What did Revolution do on buys?
It was it's somewhere in the mid 100,000s.
Yeah. So, if let's say did 140,000 buys as a just estimate here, if this one does 80, then does that tell you your ratio of, people that are interested in this and not? And then if you do it again the following year and it gets to 120 and your regular pay-per-views are doing 160, then I think you're showing a trajectory of growth in those other characters and it being beneficial to your company. But I think the sneaky takeaway from all this, because this is on pay-per-view on a Sunday in the middle of June, so we're kind of almost a month after Double or Nothing, and then we are 6 weeks before
All Out.
All Out. So obviously the where All Out is important, but I think the one thing I'm thinking is this is essentially a fifth pay-per-view for AEW, for a company that's done only four for the first couple of years, and that's obviously dipping the toes in the water for more revenue. That's how every company is going to do it. That's how I thought AEW would do it, is they would slowly get 5, then 6, then maybe get to 7 or 8 in a year before you get diminishing returns. But I think that's the one thing that, look out now, we're probably going to get 5 pay-per-views a year. If it's not a New Japan branded pay-per-view or a Impact and ROH and AEW special that we get next year, then it'll probably be some sort of blood and guts as a pay-per-view to be like differentiated from the top four. But just something to look out for. It seems like a good trajectory and growth of a company to be in the zone. So yeah, all that is interesting and important to me.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of different avenues to take this thing. I want to talk potential matches in a little bit, but welcome into the show, everybody. This is the PWTorch Fireside Chat for Thursday, April 21st, 2022. I'm PWTorch Assistant Editor Zack Heydorn with Tyler Sage, PWTorch Contributor. It's awesome to be here, and thank you for being here with us. Appreciate it. Hopefully you guys have liked the content on the channel for the last 3 weeks. It's been a blast doing these, and a lot more to come. So do us a favor, like, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And again, we will have a lot more to come here on this revamped Torch YouTube channel. So stay tuned. So Tyler, what if someone said, "Hey, okay, you got to book 2 matches for this New Japan AEW Super Show." Mm-hmm. What 2 are you going with?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you want to look at it. Just like every question. If I'm booking it for myself, I'm doing Kenny and Okada 5. I guess would be their 5th match. First one on U.S. soil. That's a no-brainer to me, and I think you can get Okada several times here. So I don't think that's like even if you could, for me, it's do the one. And for people that have heard about those matches, they're both still young enough to give a 9.5 effort instead of maybe a 10 effort they could have given 5 years ago combined. So it might lead people to go to New Japan World, which is obviously going to be more integrated with AEW, I would guess, if it's not already.
Dynamite's now streaming on New Japan World.
Yeah. So I mean, it just makes sense if there's some streaming deal that you could probably get New Japan World as part of that package. But to get people to go back and watch that and kind of get in the history of these 2 brands, not everyone's going to do that, but that match I think would be fantastic. You can tell that story, and and then the other one is, I mean, trying to think who we haven't seen in. I think Jay White alluded to it earlier. Or last night, I should say, way earlier, 12 hours ago or so. But, I think some sort of Bullet Club versus Undisputed Elite combo, maybe not this show, but the next show, there's been, if you've been following that content, there's been some backlash between, especially the, Tama Tonga and the OG Bullet Club guys taking on the elite aspect of it. They got more credit, things like that. So there's some real life mixed in there, especially I think Finn Balor / Prince Devitt is going to be available at some point here, it would seem. So you could, that's more longer term, but I think those are the 2 stories, at least for me, that are most compelling. But there's other options that you could book that make more sense from the star power and the just good matchup standpoint. So I'll let you give your 2 because I could probably steal your 2. But those are kind of my personal, what I think you can build for this year, and if you do it again down the road.
Don't steal my 2. Don't steal my 2. So, man, yeah. I mean, Okada and Omega, like, that's a special match. I almost disagree with you on that one, just because, like, I don't know that I want to see him run it back. I mean, because can you do better than that last match? Like, probably not. Like, it's almost a perfect. That 2 out of 3 falls is almost a perfect match. It's as perfect of a match as you're going to get, probably. So. God dang it. I don't know. As much as it's going to be in my backyard here. So if I can see Omega and Okada, like, I'm not going to frown at that, but it's like, man, can it live up to the hype? So, but that's a hell of a possibility. I would go with, like, if it's me wanting to see it, I'd go Okada and Punk. Just because it's like, to me, those are like the 2 biggest stars probably in both companies colliding head on. Punk, depending on what happens at Double or Nothing, if he wrestles Page, maybe the AEW World Champion. So you have that champion versus champion thing going on. So that's what I would do. And also, like, CM Punk versus Okada, like, I mean, that's the dream match of all dream matches at this point, because it's like between Okada and New Japan not having a relationship with AEW and Punk not being in wrestling. It's like the odds that would have happened a year ago are slim to none. And here we are, like stars have aligned, go with it. So that would be one. And then I'd also, boy, the second one is tough because it's you got to do something with Bryan Danielson, I think. And just the from a star power perspective, I'd probably, work in Tanahashi with him. But for me, since this is my pick, I'm going Zack Sabre Jr. and Danielson. I think that'd be such a cool match. Different, like they both can wrestle a similar style, but it fit really cool on that show. So that would be my little nugget. What if you're Tony Khan though, Tyler? Like taking our opinions out of this, what's the biggest business match they can do? Like if you're going to put like, hey, we need to sell 20,000 tickets, and in order to do that, we need the biggest match possible. Like what's that in your eyes? Where does he go to?
Yeah, I mean, man, to sell tickets, I think Okada is part of any rotation of that because I think he's got the most name value for the United States audience. Again, it depends if there's like, someone like a Prince Devitt is available. I think that's more of a mindset at the time, which I don't think that is a possibility in this time frame. But he's got 90 days, so even if you have him today, he wouldn't be available, right? So, yeah. So I think it's. I mean, for me, if you want to make money and you want to tell a story on Dynamite, with maybe the talent not being there to tell a story, I think you do MJF and Okada. I think that is, an amazing heel that could tear down and kind of have the opposite conversation that we're having of like, you're this darling here, but no one knows your name. Everyone knows me. They're going to cheer me because I'm the, he could do so many angles of that heel promo and even get a segment of the audience behind him of like, yeah, this guy's coming in and this MJF's our homegrown star, not this guy we've heard about. And I kind of want to see our, you can, not the whole tribalism thing, but like, our guy take on their guy that I've never seen because I'm not a fan that's been watching New Japan stuff. So I think MJF can book that and sell that and have a really good match with Okada as well. I think Punk could have a good match with Okada. I think it, could be 4 on the, mid 4 to mid 4s. And just, Punk is a certain style that I enjoy. I love the match last night with Dustin, but I think that with MJF, there's potential for amazing build and just like an incredible match between the two of them as well. So that's where I would go.
That's a good call. I didn't think about MJF. Yeah, wow, that's interesting for sure. I mean, it's hard to argue with. Hard to argue with that. I think.
Well, you can have him lose, which is not like Punk losing. I think that's the issue that you're going to run into with Punk and Okada. You can have Punk face, like you said, Punk could do Tanahashi. And that makes more sense from a legacy standpoint. They're kind of the same role in their companies, and it's like a match you definitely never thought would happen. So
I'd like to see Punk versus like Jay White. I mean, there's a lot of matches for there's a lot of combination of these guys that's really interesting. Like Punk and Jay White, I think would be really cool. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that's hard to argue with MJF. I didn't think about him. I mean, he can drive business, for sure. Like with being the heel that he is. Yeah, I mean, I think Punk and I think Punk and Okada would do good business too if they did that. I think Danielson and Okada would do some good business as well. Yeah. So, I think you could put that on top for sure. So yeah, interesting stuff. So as we've been talking about this, man, like, is there a negative to this, like for AEW as a company? Like, is it, and I'm playing devil's advocate on this. Listeners, viewers, I don't necessarily believe what I'm about to say, but I think it's an interesting angle to cross or bridge to cross. This is like, it's gimmickry is like a bad way to frame it because it's not, a gimmick, but it's not, this show is not going to live like in the regular cadence of AEW's ecosystem of the championship being the thing everybody's fighting for and the tag team titles being what tag teams are fighting for, personal grudge matches within AEW. So, and so like I think of it as like, all right, Survivor Series time in WWE, where everything else kind of just stops and you do this kind of show versus show faction. Doesn't really make any sense. This isn't quite like that on that level, but I mean, how long can AEW lean into this kind of like new shiny toy partnerships and co-branding and talent sharing before it doesn't resonate as much? And at that point, like, some things in the AEW umbrella have taken a back seat to allow this kind of dream stuff to happen. I mean, like, where are you at on that? Because I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that, like, hey, this is really, really freaking cool, but is it going to help grow AEW? I think you can argue no.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would argue it right now. I mean, I even, at the top said this will do definitely less pay-per-view buys than a regular AEW show. If I had to guess, it'll sell out quicker than it did in Minneapolis or where's the last one at? Baltimore, or Orlando. It was in Orlando. But those sold out in an hour, not 8 minutes. Does it really matter? No, not really. But so for the live crowd, it's there. But yeah, I think the way to look at this is, I think this is the natural progression if you're going to continue to do this, and if you want to get, like you said, it's kind of New Japan co-branded show season, and we kind of have the normal cadence of, like, this is like we're building to pay-per-views, and then in the middle of the summer when there's not a lot going on sports wise or people are on vacation, that's like the zone of, like, okay, it's AEW to do their fun stuff with outside companies, because I think a co-branded show is much better than what the relationship was with Impact, where you have essentially, you have Don Callis and the Good Brothers, and that was about it coming on to Impact. And you had your champion going wrestling like real matches, having real stories on their show. And there's no value. I mean, there's some value to Impact for a little bit for the curiosity when Omega first showed up there, but there was no good use of their talent to build anything. And it kind of went away with a whimper. And, Jay White coming the first time, I think, was a poor example of using that talent. I think Suzuki, a little better in the multiple times he's been used. But if you can get a regular cadence in these performers from another company or on your shows on a regular basis, and you can give them wins on your television to build them up as stars. And, I think it can work to build shows like this and be a fun difference between the two companies. I think that is what I find most valuable if I can put myself in an outside viewer, is that, with WWE fandom, this is our set roster of people probably for the next at least 12 months, kind of who the top players are. And you're going to see, some legends come in and interact with them, but that's kind of what you get. And then with AEW, at least I know, hey, maybe in this part of the year, there's going to be some people I maybe have heard about, but I've never seen. So I find that a benefit as well. Does that grow the product? Maybe not, but I think it keeps the difference between the two companies distinct, which is important to me as a consumer. And then also can keep that kind of shiny, interesting aspect of the company around. It can extend that warranty, if you will, of, instead of being cool and shiny for 2 years, now it can build out to 4 or 5 years of, like, all these interesting matchups you're going to see in AEW, not in WWE, but at some point, it's going to have to be your stars, and you can interact with them occasionally. But, not that AEW and WCW comparisons are my favorite thing in the world, but that first hour with the Luchadors was popular and successful, and then it wasn't. So you got to find that line. You got to know when to cut it off. And, I hesitate to say that I'm confident it'll work from that standpoint, because, again, I've alluded to it at the top of the show a lot, that I haven't loved the storytelling of really anyone that is not MJF or CM Punk or Bryan Danielson that's entered. I think Wheeler Yuta has gotten way more character work than Samoa Joe, which is insane when you put it on paper. So it can be done. It's just interesting what is attached to and what's not. So long term, I don't think it's going to grow the company necessarily, but I think it can keep the fanatics of the company kind of in line, if you will. It's kind of a crude way to say it, but I think it keeps that street cred alive, which is important too for a company like AEW.
Yeah, it is. It very much is. Yeah, I mean, this will be really interesting to see, like, especially like the booking. All right, if Okada and Punk are going at it, like, who's going over?
Yeah.
I think that'll be really,
kind of fascinating. Anything we're getting Ishii versus Adam Cole Friday night. That's pretty darn cool. You're gonna do your VIP post show on that. I mean, that's I don't know. Is Adam Cole gonna survive Ishii? My God, I feel like one punch is gonna cave in his chest.
Yeah, I think there'll be some shenanigans there. Maybe it'll be New Japan style rules where you can get in there and have Red Dragon. A little formatting note: I will be at GCW Columbus Friday night, so look for live pictures there on my Twitter that you see below. So Bruce Hazelwood is going to be hosting that show and doing the recap of this week's Rampage. So just a note: Bruce is great. Listen to that. But yeah, I think that can start to tell a story because like Cole and Ishii, there's some sort of 6-man tag that you can tell with that story there. And then one note before we leave the New Japan AEW collab, I think the one match that really has no value except for me as a fan that I want to see is Wardlow on like a handicap match against Evil and Dick Togo. I think that would and just have him absolutely destroy them and kind of switch that narrative. I don't know if they would allow that booking on Evil, but that would be my number one pick. That could main event for me personally if Evil and Dick Togo just get power bombed for 5 minutes and they get pinned.
Tremendous. That's fantastic. I second that. I've heard some rumblings of there's a slowly building groundswell for Yano against Danhausen.
Ooh.
And I'm out,
Yeah, I'm in, but I think it's the difference between you and I. Yeah.
Yes. I can't. No, please no. Even though, goddamn, I just kind of think it's going to happen. Because why wouldn't it? Yeah. Right? I mean, why wouldn't it?
Yeah, for the king of pro wrestling too, right? This guy wrestled for that belt. So
yeah. Or like Orange Cassidy against Yano too. I think that works. I guess.
You booked it, not me, so now you have to.
I know. I'm blaming myself here, man. God, see what happens, on the fireside chats. Yeah. All right, man. So, you're not a ratings guy. You've said that, but the ratings since WrestleMania are kind of, maybe back to normal, I guess, or that'd probably be the positive way to frame it. But they're down. They're down. NXT down, Raw down, Dynamite was down last week. We don't have the numbers yet for this week, so we'll have to see if that trend continues. My guess is AEW might be the outlier when that comes back because of Tony Khan's big announcement, and it was a pretty big episode of Dynamite. But there's a lot of factors at play. NBA playoffs are happening right now. NHL playoffs are going to start. Major League Baseball started up, so it's a little bit of like a tough comparison. But is it a warning sign for you where you're like, whoa, this is like something's going on in the industry? There's too much content, or is it just kind of like whatever, competition? There's more competition than ever. So this was inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big macro picture is you've seen the same trend for years now, right? Where if you look year over year from, April post WrestleManias, it's probably not the same percentage, but you're probably losing, 10 to 15% of your total viewership on average. Yeah. And it's essentially, I talked about this on the Newswire yesterday. So if you watch that, I apologize. We can do the same analogy here, but essentially, you plateau for a while, and then you get that WrestleMania bump, which is I didn't lift my hand very much. And then you dip kind of below your old plateau, and then you kind of plateau from that point if you average out 52 weeks. So that's like I haven't written a dissertation on this, but that's the trend I see. And, AEW's new and on a major cable channel and gaining interest, but still, about half of what WWE is doing as well. And, I just think it's like everything. I mean, you still look at the ratings weekly, and wrestling is in the top 3 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I mean, more so on Fridays because it's on, Fox. But so to me, it just is more a story of, people are cutting the cord. I mean, do you have cable?
I do not.
Okay, I don't either. So, we're in the same age cohort that matters for ratings. So, and I just think it's not unimportant, but I think there's a lot of, for me personally, there's a lot of, we're talking about now, but I think there's a little too much analysis on, there's like WrestleNomics, I think doing a good part of it and bringing it up occasionally to see the trend line and how many people are watching is important. But I think if you live and die by 990,000 people watching Dynamite versus 978, I think you're in the weeds a little too much. And it's more of a holistic approach of it's still no one's watching TV the same way anymore relative to 10 years ago. But those that are and those that can be tracked are watching wrestling in high percentages. So it's healthy as a business is kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's like, when you're talking TV deals, I mean, obviously like viewership matters, right? Like you want to have the viewers, you want to like grow, of course, no doubt about it. But I don't think that, I think what gets lost sometimes in the ratings analysis is, look, if AEW is a top 5 show with adults 18 to 49 regularly, like that has incredible value to a TV partner. Like it just does. Same thing with WWE. It's why they're able to secure the television deal that they are. This is why AEW, the kind of an upstart wrestling promotion, was able to secure the television deal that they were. Like that stuff matters. To say that you're number 1 or top 5, whatever it is, like yes, you want high viewership, but the rating and the position that you land within that key demo is so important. And habitually, both WWE and AEW land like strong in those areas. And I think that, so yeah, like viewership fluctuates and ultimately is going down across the board for WWE, at least. Like the bigger picture is, and maybe the more important picture, if you're Vince McMahon, is, well, yeah, that's true, but look, we're still a top 5 show, 70% of the weeks or 80% of the weeks. Like that matters a lot. The other thing is, we look at it week to week right now, and we report on it at the Torch. And, if you look at it that way, you're going to have ups and downs. But WrestleNomics just put out kind of like a broader scope and a broader look at the AEW ratings, and like across the board, that business is up significantly. Ratings are up, pay-per-view buys are up, and there was a couple other things that he mentioned on there. So you can check them out at WrestleNomics on Twitter. It's a really interesting report, but it tells you that, like, okay, yeah, week to week you see kind of these ups and downs, but generally speaking, holistically, it's a business that's growing, maybe in small leaps, but growing nonetheless. And so it is all a matter of context, I think, with ratings.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a new television product that is growing, which is like nothing is doing that unless your name is the NFL. I mean, NBA playoffs are down over, NHL just went to ESPN from NBC Sports Network, and they're going to be flat at best for their playoffs this year. So, and that's a much bigger platform. And yeah, I mean, just looking at anything, and I think, anything post Game of Thrones on TV, like, I don't know what show you've talked about with your coworkers or your friends, but there's less people watching that show when you are, even like a Squid Games, I think is the most like viral show I can think of in the last year. Yep. And even that, like, if you combo, people were watching it over 2 months, like on average weekly, like more people were watching wrestling together than they were watching Squid Game. And that felt like a cascade of, societal event, and wrestling just happens every week forever in perpetuity, and it just cannot be viral forever. And that's why you don't like hear people talking about it. But, that's kind of my more holistic approach of like it in the culture and why it doesn't feel as impactful as it did in the peak times. So,
yeah, I mean, no one's saying like, hey, so it's okay that they're not increasing their viewership. I mean, that you want to do that. That's not, I want to make that clear. Like you want to grow your viewership because that means higher pay-per-view buys. That means a bigger TV deal when you have the chance to get that. It means, more merch, like whatever. It means a lot. But, both of that and, well, they are growing. It can be happening at the same time, So the post WrestleMania dip, I think, is normal if you went and looked at the trends. However, like, let's talk about WWE here for a minute. Like, you had this big like story culminate at WrestleMania this year. And what I thought was one of the best built WrestleMania main events in the last, 8 years, like pretty much better than anything since the Danielson run to the title at WrestleMania 30. Like, just really well done, like good storytelling, good work, big stars, big stakes, and everything's boiling kind of at the right time. And so you crown this unified world champion. And now post WrestleMania, like, I just don't think they're getting anything out of it. Like, it's like, okay, he has this unified title. We don't really know what it means. We don't really know what the situation is. Is Roman Reigns going to keep both belts? Like, is he going to be on both shows? Is he going to drop one of the belts? Like, they pumped so much into this story going into WrestleMania, and coming out of it, you have this unified world champion. But really, Tyler, he hasn't done much as unified world champion in that spot. It's been like a holding pattern. And so I think like that idea has cooled pretty drastically. And they're kind of doubling down on it with the Usos versus RK Bro, unifying the tag title. So what are you making with all this unification nonsense?
Yeah,
really good. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so like from your initial point there of like essentially being pretty cool coming off WrestleMania, I think there's two minds about that, and I'm not, McMahon or Pritchard or anyone else making decisions like that. My read on it, just sitting and watching at home, is that they kind of understand that the post WrestleMania dip is inevitable, and I think past Mondays after WrestleMania, years ago, 10 years ago, I think it was like 2012 or earlier, when Brock Lesnar came back from being gone for a decade basically, and you had huge reveals like that, and it felt like the mindset was take all this momentum we got from WrestleMania and let's try and carry it and retain some of those fans that we gained over the process. And it doesn't feel like that same energy is behind the booking decisions now, and that is probably a lot of data that they have, that it doesn't really matter what they do or have big reveals. You have a new star debuting in Cody that they probably thought would fill that boat. But I think it's just more of an acknowledgement, not that they're not trying, but acknowledgement of like, hey, this is kind of the natural ebbs and flows of the business. And that's kind of just that they've kind of assumed that and are fine with that at the moment. And so, WWE does a lot of things and then they kind of turn on a dime and switch things up. So I'm sure that'll switch, in a year or two, and they'll try and really get the momentum from WrestleMania, especially, a post Rock WrestleMania. If they can get that, they get Rock and Austin at the next WrestleMania, they'll probably try a lot harder to maintain momentum going out of that. So, but then, the unification of the tag belts, I like the idea. I'm a fewer the belts, the better kind of person though. So that's my bias is built in there. But I think if you have only a certain number of titles, especially in WWE, where they don't love to tell stories about championships throughout the year, they like to tell more of personal grudges and stories like that. I think it works better with their product. So I like it personally. I don't like the idea of everyone being on every show though. So I want to be clear about that. But I think it makes this upcoming pay-per-view intriguing for me and puts that as a main event type match if you're not going to have Roman defending the unified title. So yeah, I like it right now. I would like it if both belts kind of stayed the way they are for a period of time to make it feel like it meant something, as opposed to just breaking them up immediately. So it's all in the execution, but I'm digging WWE more than I have in a long time, holistically, if that helps.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I think, generally speaking, they have pretty decent shows. Like, there's always going to be that thing of like, well, it's inconsistent. Like, well, how did the lights turn off? Like, that stuff's going to be there. Yeah. But if you can get past that, and not everybody can, and it's not a knock. It's just that's going to be your WWE viewing experience, for better or worse. Yeah. Wade talks about that a lot. Like, you can't watch Monday Night Raw thinking that you're going to get like a night of the G1, right? Yeah. Like, it's not the same thing. It's totally different products. And so I think for what WWE is trying to be, it's been pretty good. I don't want to let them off the hook though, as far as like, you have a freaking unified world champion for the first time in quite some time. Like, I think they have to get more out of that. I really do. Like it, and you know, and it starts with defining what it's going to mean. Like, all right, you're going to be on both shows. You're just going to be on SmackDown still, and like I just think that if you want that to shine, like you got to put some shine on it, put some effort into making that seem like a really big deal. And like we had Roman Reigns post WrestleMania Raw cut basically. It was a good promo, but it didn't say much. And then he kicked the can down the road to SmackDown, and again didn't say a ton. And then we didn't see him last week on the show. So it's like, all right, you have this world champion. Like, I don't know, do something with him. That's my take. I think you're accurate in terms of how they're looking at it, but it's like you still have a unified world champion, first time in a long time. Like you got to be getting more out of it than 5-week lows in your ratings. To me,
yeah, I mean, I think that's just you are not to get philosophical here. I think you're expecting your critiques are to get the most out of any product is kind of where you're coming from. That they have the opportunity to capitalize here and they're not. And I'm more in the zone of like, I don't know, not say I expected really nothing to happen from this initially. I think there would be some good stories to tell, but I didn't think there was going to be something I needed to see on SmackDown 5 days after WrestleMania. I'm mentally trained to know that WWE will do that when they want to, and to kind of that's how I can still watch it, to be honest with you, is that I don't have great expectations for the not entertaining stuff happening. I expect entertaining stuff and mildly good stories to happen, but I'm not expecting earth-shattering revelations and all that stuff, which they could definitely do. They've got the potential with it now, and I just kind of have fallen into this zone with them and understand what they are, and if they change, that's great. But I think you're accurate in everything you're saying, and I'm just not surprised at that where it is. So I think we're both correct, and I think I wish they had your mentality on the Roman Reigns subject is the moral of the story. So
well, yeah, especially with Rock on the horizon potentially. Man, feed that thing. But yeah, I digress. I don't want to get into a rant, or maybe I do. I'm not sure. You said you kind of got looped back into WWE. Can you pinpoint what it is that is making it better for you to watch now? Because I think that's just an interesting thing. Because I'm watching it every week, and it's not a hate watch at all, but it's just it's what I like to do. I'm covering the product every week, so it's part of the job. But it has been more enjoyable, and I think anybody who says differently, I just don't think is watching the show, because it has been better. Yeah. But what stood out to you to make you go, I'll give this a shot, outside of covering it at the tour?
Yeah, I mean, for sure with the post-Mania stuff, I wanted to see Cody and his character on Raw. I mean, that's been the main factor. I mean, that he's their biggest guy, and he's going to do the first 15-minute promo almost every night for the first 6 weeks here. And I've always found Seth Rollins to be compelling, and have kind of always been interested in what he's doing, good, bad, indifferent on that. So that's interesting. And I think formatting the show around a central story is something WWE's always been really good about, and AEW has not. Yeah. So watching a lot of AEW, and then watching watching Raw, let's say, from Monday, you come out, you have Seth and Cody, and they cut a promo, and they're kind of explaining why they're going to fight again, which is fine. And then you build to the main event story, it's going to be sandwiched with some other content between there, but that's your through line. And I kind of like that formatting. It's like watching a season of a television show, right? Where typically the first and last episodes are there's a lot of key importance going on in there to set up the next story. And then there's stuff in the middle that is good, and some episodes you can skip. So to me, I watch it like that, where it's a little bit of a buffet of wrestling, and I can pop in and out and not feel like I'm missing a ton. So it's a more casual experience for me, but it's an enjoyable casual experience. If I'm watching I was watching a NBA playoff game, and I flip back and forth to see what's going on. If there's a segment I'm enjoying, I'll stay on that, and then I'll read a recap later. Just to be fully honest with my viewing habits of Raw and SmackDown, I'll watch on delay because I do Rampage, and I can't do 3 hours of wrestling and then talk about it for 2 hours. That's just not good for my brain. So, yeah, so it's a different presentation. Like last night's Dynamite, for example, I was not a big fan of. I don't know if I was in a bad mood or whatnot, but I hated the format. Nothing really happened that was consequential. Minus, I like the Punk and Dustin match a lot at the beginning, but everything else was kind of, I don't know, it just didn't feel right to me. And it was just, 7 matches is a lot in 2 hours, and Raw is just the absolute difference. And as a consumer, I like that because it's not just fitting so much content in there that it makes me kind of lose interest in lots of stuff occasionally. Sometimes I'm locked into AEW and I love that format, so I'm not trying to disparage either, but Raw is specifically, and SmackDown a little bit so. I mean, SmackDown has almost no wrestling, so I'm probably more critical about SmackDown these days than Raw, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's just a different experience and it's good to watch something I like in 2 different formats and kind of pick and choose which one I like more that week. So I think where we're at right now in April 2022 is kind of where I was hoping we would be with 2 major companies, that I can kind of pick and choose how I want to consume products and based on the performers I'm watching. So yeah, a long answer to your question, but that's kind of more why I'm not as down on WWE as I was, especially, pre SummerSlam last year. I mean, it was like unwatchable when Alexa Bliss and the doll are like your main things. It's just like a tough watch, and it makes you really question what you're doing with your life. So.
And in the Thunderdome environment too, at that point.
Which is all tough. The live crowds definitely helped and all that. So, but even post, with live crowds, after the first couple of weeks, I thought WWE was pretty poor on the whole for a long period of time, and they've definitely, I think really almost all of 2022 have really had more of an effort to put on quality shows. I think it's an effort thing and a formatting thing, and so there's lots of things there. Well, we'll do a live Raw watch along one week, and I'll point out what I like and don't like. That'd be
a blast. Yeah, put a pin in that one. You mentioned the 2 major companies. We'll wrap on this. Impact is still there, still around. You may not know it, but they are there. Rebellion on pay-per-view this weekend. And here's the deal. Not everybody has access to watch Impact. It's not there's not a lot of people just in general consuming that product. So you can certainly analyze what they're doing from that lens and go, well, geez, this is not working, right? Because it's not drawing. However, it's very much nowadays like a niche wrestling promotion. Like wrestling's its own entertainment niche, and this is like a niche of a niche of a niche of that. So if you look at it from that lens, though, they've got a good card coming up this weekend on Saturday. Josh Alexander versus Moose in the main event for the Impact World Championship. That feud has been simmering since October. They've told a pretty good story, personal story about Alexander's kind of chase to the title. His family's involved. They've just done a really good job telling that story. The championship is at the focus. There's some other interesting matches on the show. Ishii against, oh my God, I'm blanking.
Jonah.
Ishii against Jonah. That's going to be a hell of a fight. And Jay White's on the card. So there's a lot there. But Tyler, is the fact that there's a lot there worth, whatever, the $25 or whatever it is to watch the show on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, like you said at the top, I think it depends who you are and what you're into, and how much time you have to watch stuff. So I think the perfect demo for an Impact pay-per-view, at least in my opinion, is someone who doesn't watch WWE at all, except for maybe the major shows, watches AEW weekly, and then maybe hasn't dabbled in an Impact in New Japan or GCW or, any other sort of local indie. There's so many wrestling promotions on, fight.tv that you can check out. So it's more that somebody's second promotion. And at least as a consumer, that's kind of how I view Impact. It's not my second promotion, but I think that fits nicely with other people, especially if you have access to the TV product. Now, I'm sure it's on Fight or it's on Twitch for free, but that's kind of a barrier of entry. A lot of people just like to watch from their service and flip it on, not have to get content like that and whatnot. So, the fact that it's hard to watch live easily doesn't help. But so yeah, I think where I'm coming from here is that I think in general Impact is in a good spot if they're paying the bills and making payroll and there's some money at the end of the day. I don't know how it's structured there, but especially with ROH gone and they're now, ROH to me is WWE ECW essentially at this point, right? It's NXT, it's whatever you want to call it. It's not a real promotion, and within the United States, I mean, there's got to be a secondary promotion for all the talent that doesn't fit into the main companies, and it works as that for a lot of talent. It also works, I mean, for years Impact has been pound for pound the best women's division pretty easily from a work rate standpoint and building of stars standpoint. And like Ring of Honor built so many stars for current day WWE and AEW, right? I mean, they both, you just look at the rosters, there's very few people that are not named Roman Reigns that are not have some legacy in Ring of Honor. I think Impact going for that portion to be like a point for people to jump off on and be that secondary promotion for other people is important. And it's not it for me at the moment, but I respect it for people that it is. And I just haven't had the legacy with it. I think I have more of a legacy with Ring of Honor personally, where I'm located to geographically. I think that means a huge difference. So if you can see the shows very easily, Impact for me is like the Southern Ring of Honor, essentially, with like your visibility for it. And I'm just barely East Coast / Midwestern where I am. So I had a lot of opportunity to see Ring of Honor locally and things like that. So I think I lost the sauce on your original question, but
no, you didn't. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, look, if there wasn't, if AEW wasn't around and NXT wasn't around and, it was just WWE and Impact, this would be a show that I would highly recommend right now. Cause I mean, it's a smooth show. Like the wrestling is good. The product is good. It's A to B, it's simplistic, but it's pro wrestling, right? I mean, you don't have to, we're not curing cancer here. Like it's pro wrestling. And so you can keep it simple, and they have, and it's worked for them. But the thing is, like, you drop that show into all the wrestling that's out there, then it becomes a little bit more of a difficult sell. Like, it's like, are you going to watch that show over Rampage? It depends. Like, I don't know that I'd make that recommendation, because I think Rampage is just a better show, bigger stars, better wrestling. But somebody could make that argument. Stories are certainly better on Impact week to week than they are on Rampage itself. So that's there, but it's just, it's a good show that not enough people are watching, but there's just not enough time to watch all the decent wrestling shows that are out there. So it's hard to say, yeah, drop AEW and watch Impact. Like that's, that would be wrong, but it's still a good show to check out if you have the bandwidth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in that hypothetical environment that you were stating, I'd probably be an Impact first guy right now if there's no AEW and there's no, New Japan stuff live in the United States. So yeah, it's just unfortunate. I mean, they had that spot for a while there, and they kind of, we know the history there, and then they kind of whipped back around. So, it's a lot like ROH in the trajectory to me, honestly, of it being that hot kind of secondary product, and then having a long time of being a lull, and then having a comeback. Like right now, we're probably in the, the Cody, Young Bucks, Kenny part of Ring of Honor, where it kind of had a resurgence. Then you have all those guys around them too that get bolstered. And then, in 2 years, hopefully it's not the case, but it might be just not the quality product it once was, and then, be sold to somebody. So hopefully not, but I feel like it's on pretty close trajectory with what Ring of Honor was. And this is year. I mean, they're about the same age, so it lasts longer than Ring of Honor technically, but so there you go.
Well, you don't watch it out there, viewers. We will have a report at PWTorch.com. We'll talk about it next week here on the Fireside, and I'll be watching and live tweeting that thing too. So, all right, Tyler, well, we'll put a bow on it there, man. Great conversation, great chat as always. You're going to be at GCW. Can't wait to hear all about that on this show next week. And everybody go follow Tyler to get some pictures. Are you getting a big time death match out there?
No, well, we'll see. I don't want to narc on anybody, but the state of Ohio, the Sports Commission, you're not allowed to intentionally cut your opponent in a professional wrestling ring in the state of Ohio. So
okay.
they could
So
hard
what?
way, they could Vaseline a cut sort of thing, but I don't think there's no death match booked. So I think that is a state issue. So
Telling,
we'll see.
yes.
But I'll be front row, so I will get some good
Nice.
pictures for everybody, and should be a good card. There's some good stuff going on. So
That's awesome. Yeah, that'll be a blast, man. We'll have a good time. Everybody, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. You know, you guys are the best. Keep the comments rolling. Would love to know what New Japan AEW match you're looking to see. So drop that in the comments. We can talk through some of those next week. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, text a friend. We'd very much appreciate it. But for Tyler, I'm Zach. And until next time, we'll catch you down the road.